Hi, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Megan Soche. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Accounts here at Texi, and I'm thrilled to be your host and MC and conversation starter for a critical topic, and that is how do we attack the churn crisis in the telecommunications industry? Our goal today is to drive a meaningful conversation for you, our audience members, and to bring you into a conversation with our three strategic board advisors. At Texi, we've been lucky enough to bring in telecommunications experts to help us genuinely connect with the problems that are facing the industry and have a different perspective on how we can make an impact. Today, I'm joined by our three advisors, Lawrence Oskowitz, who is a 38-year veteran of the telecommunications industry and really focuses on the finance side of it. Storjo Basso, who is a customer experience leader with field and contact center experience, and Domenico D'Ambrosio, who is the managing partner at Andiamo Advisory Groups. Today, we'll be sharing their perspectives and having a conversation. Throughout this webinar, you have the opportunity to put in your questions in the chat. You'll see our marketing team is going to grab those and put them in so that we can have you as part of the conversation. So let's jump in. Today, when we think about, when we think about to kick things off, let's talk about something that's keeping the executives up at night in all of the telecommunications industry, and that's churn. It's not just the symptom of what's happening in the industry, but it's the strategic imperative that really directly impacts the profitability. Lawrence, I'd be interested to get your perspective from finance. Can you talk a little bit about the true cost of churn from the telco industry?
Thanks, Megan. So to think about churn, maybe it's worth taking one step back and talking about CapEx. So the carriers have been spending literally billions of dollars in upgrading their network, from a voice-oriented network to a broadband-oriented network. They've been moving from legacy copper to fiber, or in the wireless space, they've been moving from 2G, 3G, 4G to 5G. So they've been spending billions and billions of dollars on it. And the reason they're doing it is to get a return on their investment. So to get that return on investment, there's really some basic math that goes on over here on top of the CapEx. It's the cost of acquisition. What's the sales and marketing to going ahead and bringing on the extra customer? That's all on the cost side. And on the other side, on the revenue side, when you're passing all of these homes, there's a certain percentage of customers that you hope to get. There's a certain revenue one hopes to get from the customers and the length of time one hopes to get there. You pull all of this math together, you get a payback period, you get a return on investment. So churn really goes to that revenue side of it. The cost of acquisition has been spent. The CapEx has been spent. When you're losing a customer, all of a sudden that time that someone is going to be there shrinks. So people know that, or they hope that the customer lifetime value, when you're going to have somebody there, they're there for 2 years, 5 years. There's a great return on that investment. If you're going to lose a customer that you've already acquired, the math doesn't work. There's a negative investment in going ahead and doing that. So not only have you built out a network, but you've also wasted that cost of acquisition. That customer is now negative. On top of that, there may be other ramifications of the bad press. They'll tell other friends that this was a bad experience. And now the percentage of customers that you're going to get has come down. So the impact is remarkable. It just doesn't impact that one customer that you've lost, but it impacts the billions of dollars that have been spent in this industry. So churn really is a ripple effect in a very negative way for carriers.
It's interesting, Lawrence, you brought up the word of mouth. And early in my career, I worked in a consulting that ratio used to look like if you had a great experience, you told 2 people. If you had a terrible experience, you told 10. I think with the platforms that are available today to share your experiences, that ripple effect is also just exponential for touting or sharing your negative experiences, which is maybe part of just a human experience, and now we have ways to amplify that, 100 times over. Beyond those, and the financial implications are so clear, Lawrence, and the math is very clear. Domenico, you've noted significant shifts in how the telecommunications organizations are shifting to manage this. How is customer experience playing a larger role now in those telecommunications budgets, and shifting in just how experience weighs into them?
That's great. Megan, first off, it's always great to be with you. I appreciate that. It's even better to partner with you in Texi as it relates to your willingness to listen and understand where the industry is going. I wish more folks would do that and just really speak the language of the industry. So your question really dovetails right off of what Lawrence said. As you listen to Lawrence and you watch that bouncing ball of how the money just became more negative or more pressure filled, there's also a place in that within marketing. Probably only second to the capital expenditure that Lawrence was talking about. The next big expense for telcos is in the marketing space. They spend a lot of money doing that. And generally the breakout used to be 80% was spent on acquisition and 20% on retention, which intuitively, I'm not sure everybody really knew at the end of the day, because of how much you would spend to get somebody on board and then only use so much, right, to keep them on board. We've started to see a shift start to happen though, where now it's becoming more like 65-35, 60-40 with acquisition and retention. Now, some of that's just because of the maturity of the industry. A lot of analysts would tell you so, but there's also how those dollars are being allocated. I think that's really important. Where it used to be spent just on marketing itself, right? Putting offers out there for existing base, loyalty offers.
Mm-hmm.
Some cases that was like bringing a hammer to fix every situation. Well, now everything's becoming very hyper personalized, hyper specific to that customer on where they're at in their specific journey. And the only way to do that is by feeding the customer experience teams that are out there now. So a lot of that shift that you're seeing from that 20 to 35 to 40%, it's actually being done at the customer experience level, which includes their journey across their experience. So when people say customer experience is becoming part of the marketing spend, it's absolutely accurate on how it's being implemented and how it's being executed. So knowing the customer's pain points at all times is a huge, huge benefit for carriers, so they can go at the customer when they need to. I always say this, Megan, you've heard me say this ad nauseum. I think telcos in particular have had a bad habit, quite honestly. I was one that had a bad habit when I was deeper in the industry working directly for them. We, as the industry, assume we're having multiple conversations with the customer. Maybe one about network, maybe one about a device, maybe one about an experience. The reality is the customer's only having one conversation with you, right? And they expect you to understand and know what they've been through and to make them feel seen, which is appropriate for where we're at in society right now at the end of the day. So the more seen they could be, the more reactive they're going to be or receptive they're going to be to whatever offer you put in front of them to keep them going. So that's the struggle and what the customer experience teams are going through. And it's really, really interesting and exciting to see how much time and effort is being put into that, because it's the right moves.
I love that. And I know myself and the team have been so appreciative to have this group of expert and real industry practitioners. We are practitioners and experts in our domains and impacts to customers and outcomes, but really understanding the challenges of this dynamic and the shift makes a big difference in how we think about both how we're partnering with customers to solve problems, but also what problems we're really trying to solve. And I think in the whole home experience, in this new framework of the customer experience and the personalization, that differentiation of what was really a speed price acquisition, how could as Lawrence talked about the lifetime value of a customer, there was a very linear path of what you expected is from the customer, both from a cluster of maybe negative experiences or tough experiences with related to a change in the environment, whether that was a new install or a problem on the network, and then everything else was smooth sailing. And that's really rapidly changing. It feels like that home and that battleground for what happens in the home is really a switch. And Sorjo, you and I have spent some time talking about at CCW and other places the importance of the in-home experience. I'd love to get your perspective on why delivering that exceptional connectivity experience inside the house is so critical.
Thanks, Megan. And I think all of us on this panel, people who are watching, we've all been customers here, and we're customers today. So we personally understand the importance of having a strong connection inside the home. I think in the last couple of years here, telecom has shifted. It isn't just about reaching the home anymore. It's about delivering that seamless performance inside the home. But if your connectivity is going to drop, whether it's in the bedroom or the kitchen, customers aren't going to blame whatever router model they have. They're going to blame the provider. They're going to blame the ISP. And kind of following up to what Dom and Lawrence and you were talking about, the product is necessarily no longer the actual internet connectivity, or yes, that's still the product, but really is shifting to where the experience is becoming the product. And to solve that problem with the experience, that takes visibility, that takes the right automation, the right AI combined with it. We need to understand the home as it really is. So when I worked at Altice and at AT&T, and I saw firsthand that churn was driven less by price and more by connectivity failures. And Wi-Fi performance specifically, even if it's not a full outage, even if it's intermittent, up and down, all of that led to repeat friction, and which in turn then led to churn. And I saw this ad nauseum in the contact center. The industry, I feel, has kind of over-indexed on infrastructure a little bit, whether it's fiber or 5G. And up until now, there has been a corresponding underinvestment in experience, which is what Dom was just talking about, and how the budgets are shifting in CX, right? And it's great that that's happening, and the industry realizing that. So again, customers today, they don't care who's at fault, whether it's an ISP or a router or their Ring smart device or whatever it is. They just want that always on experience and that seamless connectivity.
And Sergio, you really hit on the heart of the emotion, the feeling part of this. And Domenico, I know you and I've chatted a lot about productivity zones and family headquarters. That emotional connection that customers have, how do you see that playing into these journeys, and how telecommunications can go beyond just selling the technology, and especially as speed becomes a commodity in many ways?
Yeah, I think one thing we love to talk about is, just think about this for a second, technology and the advancement of technology and what's coming, what's here. It's never going to be as slow as it is right now. I mean, if you think about that for a second, that's kind of crazy compared to what we're actually experiencing from a speed perspective. Well, as somebody that has a home full of people, right? It's never been tougher to be a parent in a home, to run a household. I mean, I can tell you, we have a bunch of them running around here. It's never been tougher, because to keep your finger on everything is almost, impossible at times. And you rely on technology quite a bit to get you to be where you need to be. You want to be nimble in what you do so you can still be productive in other ways, right? So you could do the proverbial put the food on the table piece. But when you're being pulled in so many different directions because of all the technology that's in your home and what does work and what doesn't work, it can be very taxing for someone that's running the household, right? Or if you have guests, like now, think about that, right? It's not just about cleaning your house and making sure your home's ready for a guest. you got to make sure your technology is ready for your guests. That's a true thing, right? Oh, shoot, Wi-Fi is not working. They're going to hate the experience at my home. I mean, like I get hives just thinking about Wi-Fi not working when I invite somebody over. I mean, that's a terrible experience, right? And would we have said that 4 or 5 years from now? So truly the home has become the family headquarters, right? And we need to continue to figure out how we enable those folks in homes to run headquarters. I've been lucky enough to work at headquarters for several companies, and I will tell you this job, running a family headquarters, is way harder. It's way harder because I don't have all the resources that I need sometimes, or I don't spend the time to put the resources in place. So when companies help me figure it out and are thinking like me, for me, about me, that helps me perform much better here at home, right? So I can do multiple things at one time. I can have things fixed. And I think I'm not the only one that feels that way. You don't have to go to too many blogs or too many social posts to see the same exact thing. Like, how do I control this? How do I control that? And everyone's looking for advice. And when they hear these empowered stories, and look, of course, I'm biased to Texie because I get to see it firsthand, but to see these empowered stories where you're putting the technology in their hand through the visual means in which you all do, and they can do it themselves without having to spend hours, trying to get something rectified. Again, it puts that person who's running the household in a position to just slow down that speed of change just a little bit, right? To help them, accomplish what they want to, and then they can get on to what they need to do to be a productive member of whatever society they're contributing to. So yeah, family HQ is a real thing. And, I'm taking applications for anybody that wants to help.
Yeah. I never thought that the most
that didn't sound right because I have a great partner to help me with that. But I mean, her and I both could use some help though.
we could always have an extra person, right?
Yeah, right. Just realized how that sounded.
I never thought, Dom, that the most important piece of data that guests would be looking for in my home was the password to our network. It's front and center as you were describing the family HQ. I often tell people on my very first day with Texie as an employee, my husband came into my office and held up his phone and said, "Is this you?" Because our provider is actually a customer. And he had gotten a Texie session as he was trying to fix our family HQ. So it is absolutely a powerful statement in terms of how we help customers today. And when
not to be silly, Megan. And I do try to bring some levity to some situations, but like, call it what you will for my family. We assign it. Like, we assign the person who's going to tell everybody if they're having like a Wi-Fi issue in our house when they come over, right? Our now 18-year-old, it's her job. She knows that. She goes around like bumping everybody's phone so she can give them our password. I'm like, I don't want to hear the question. Like, deal with it. So
I feel like that should be a new task or a new goal, a new role in my family for
new chore, right? A new chore.
Right. Well, and as important as that is to both your family and the guests and the big ecosystem, churn obviously is the outcome of having that negative experience, right? We as a team have spent several times talking about that most vulnerable period of churn, which is in the first days of service or first days of a change of service. 10 to 15% is what we have seen on the annual churn occurs, and we've discussed. And Lawrence, you really brought a point home to us recently in a conversation that says there's zero excuse for the first 90 days of churn, because that's really on us. When you think about that, and I'd love to get you to share a little more around what are those primary reasons for early attrition, and what are the key measures like fast recovery when mistakes occur, or active identification of customer needs, that telcos can implement to mitigate that 100% accountability in the first 90 days.
Thanks. Actually, I have to start with some of the other great comments that people were saying over here, and then I'm going to come back exactly to your question. I think it was great hearing the three of you talk about essentially it's a commodity, right? We've assumed that broadband is a commodity. And what I was thinking about, you think about electricity, you think about water. We assume that it goes everywhere inside the home. We wouldn't be very happy if the electric provider just stopped at our door And then it's like, figure it out on your own, how to get electricity everywhere, how to get water. It's built into our entire infrastructure of our homes, our workplaces. It's an assumed commodity that we all have come to rely on. And if it goes down, we call a plumber, we call an electrician. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm not going into the sink. I'm not going to. And here with broadband, we're like, to Sergio's comment, we're going to blame the provider. Whether or not the provider only came to the door or was providing a managed Wi-Fi experience, we're going to blame them for the experience and or find someone to deal with it. So the Texi solution, being able to empower an individual to go ahead and figure out a lot of these things out, is great. It's just a shift in the commodity orientation. So when you guys were just speaking, I was just thinking about that dynamic. So what we were talking about, the first 90 days. So somebody, new home, or decided to switch because they saw a promotion and said, I'm coming and I'm going to go ahead and do a switch. So when you're into that microscope to going ahead and making a switch, I've decided to choose this provider to go ahead and give me my internet. And then for whatever reason, on that onboarding experience, or it just doesn't work, it is a control dynamic. They've chosen you. Your cost of acquisition was there. They've chosen you. You've done your truck roll if you need to. You've spent the marketing. You've given them the CPE, the modem, the router. You're good to go, and you failed for some reason. That is a dynamic that is totally on the carrier to go ahead and address and fix. A lot of times people think about churn as one number. You'll hear carriers talk about a churn of 1.4%, 0.7%, whatever that churn happens to be. I've been on a number of company boards, telecom company boards. I work with telecom companies all the time as a banker and as an advisor. The reality is that there are essentially two churns that are really there. That churn, that onboarding churn, the first 90 days or so, and then there's the other churn. The first 90-day churn is a carrier-controlled situation that the carrier can go ahead and fix and repair and give a better performance. So you have better performance, better support to go ahead and make that happen, as opposed to life churn. Once you're going ahead and you're past those 90 days, people move, different things happen to a business, they see a better offer from somebody else. That's more pricing and speed and other than life situations that come apart. So I think, this first 90 days is really incumbent on the customer. Your sales and marketing team have done their job. It's now the time to go ahead and have a performance and support that's going to be there. And Texi is one of those technologies that can really enable people to go ahead and make sure they've got a whole home connected experience, right? We're not just going to the home anymore. We're going, and not just through the home, we're going to devices. There are over a dozen devices that people have connected to their home. Dominica was talking about the headquarters. Yeah, it's a lot of people in your home, people who live there, people who are visiting, but it's their Ring cameras, it's the speakers, it's the Nest, it's the Echo, it's all the different devices that people have in a home. It's not to the home, it's to the devices. And you're only going to be able to get there if you can go ahead and make people comfortable and happy in those first 90 days saying, that was awesome, a great experience. I've got all my devices connected. And then hopefully you have a customer for a long, long period. Again, going back to that customer lifetime value, hopefully there are many years of a happy customer experience, and the customer wins and the carrier wins.
Oh, please, Domenico.
Megan, sorry, I was trying to catch you before. If I may just add something on there, as it relates to what Lawrence said. Lawrence is so spot on. I love how he phrased to the device, because it really is to the device at the end of the day, right? You're only as good as your one device that's not working sometimes. But, in the first 90 days, I think Sergio referenced this as well. What happens in the first 90 days from a churn perspective is also what happens later on, but it's different. What I mean by that, the overall reasons for churn, anybody from the telco industry listen to this isn't groundbreaking information. It's price, connectivity, and experience. Those are the three reasons people churn, the top three, as a lifetime. Well, the first 90 days, they're the same as well. Price, connectivity, and experience. However, price actually drops to be the third reason, and experience and connectivity take the top two spots pretty easily, actually, because to the point Lawrence made, they know what they bought, they know how much it was, and they've made the commitment, right? They have, in essence, bit on your cost of acquisition tactics, and they're ready to go forward with you at the price they agreed. But just like anything else, whether it be a relationship all the way to a brand new car, that first 90 days is when that new customer is going to be the most critical of you. You know that going in. So when Lawrence says there's no excuse, there really is no excuse. I mean, think about it. When you put yourself in that mode, when you bought your last new car and you're sitting in it for the first time, and the salesperson is walking you through how the car operates, right? Now, some fancy car dealers call it fitting you in the car, which I think is interesting. Sounds really cool. But what are the two things you're thinking about? You're thinking about the present / future of you in that car, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're also thinking about the past, where everything else your former car had and where it was. By the way, little PSA to car manufacturers, free consulting advice here. If you could put the gear shift in the same place in every car, that would be really helpful for me personally, but separate. I'm not an automotive expert. But I mean, that's what you're constantly thinking about. And you're comparing, do I like this thing or do I not like this thing, right? I used to think like, how could people return cars in the first 90 days? But it's a thing in the automotive industry. Like they do.
Yeah, that when I think at least for me, Dominic got frozen.
Yeah, I think
So,
Domenico
but
got frozen.
but
But
that experience,
it is a thing, right? It is a
it's
thing.
definitely a thing. It's so nice for him to go ahead and refer to a car because we're talking about a thing, as he was saying, as opposed to the next boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Which is like, hey, I left the last boyfriend because he did A, B, C. It's like, this new boyfriend does the exact same thing. Why did I leave?
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
I think you're right. Don, what you said, you had a point where you said you're never more critical and more focused on the inspection than the first 90 days or the first period of time. And, I think about the industry, as I understand it, has really relied on very prescriptive diagnostic tools that sometimes miss the experience side for the customer, right? So really thinking about what I can see from my side of the equation, but not necessarily from your side of the equation, which is what's happening in the home. And Sorjo, you mentioned that the data visualization or understanding the inside experience of the home changes that dynamic from a more conventional experience of being able to detail or understand really what the experience is. And I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's a game changer, Megan. All the times I've spent listening to calls and sitting with agents in the call center, trying to solve customer problems. I think now we're at a point where we're finally seeing the tech that can turn this around. So as all three of you mentioned, early tenure churn, first 90 days, right? It's not because of price, it's because of poor connectivity, poor experience. Visual AI is kind of the new tech that we're seeing now, which helps us, no pun intended, see the issue before it becomes a support call, right? And then that support call could very well lead to a lost customer, which is a churn. So again, going back to my earlier point, churn can be prevented through visibility. The industry has kind of over prioritized the infrastructure, but they've missed the in-home experience. So what we need now is the ability to see the problem before the customer feels it, right? So we've got to be proactive. And if we can have something that helps us drive proactive onboarding, proactive diagnostics, that's the solution we need. And that's where we come to AI combined with visual intelligence as kind of the next lever we need to truly move the needle on early churn. And so,
Right.
talk about retention, it's not just support, it's the entire journey, right? It's setup, install, verification, education, and all of that needs to happen visually.
Yeah, it's a great point, Sorjo. That and there's a question in the chat that our marketing team just relayed. How are your teams measuring connectivity experience today beyond speed or signal strength? And I think this probably comes to me as the techie person, employee in the room. When, just to dovetail on your comments, this idea of being able to see differently, use the AI to see, from our perspective, from a techie perspective, the problem that we've been trying to solve is that today, as you stated, as all three of you stated, we've had really good metrics on, is it on, is it off? The data that comes from the box, so to speak, from either the modem or the router, or all of those components. I think I used modem, which is a very long-term, a historical reference probably, but from the routers, from all of the CPE that's in the home. As we think about signal and speed, there's speed tests, obviously. What Texi is bringing to market is an ability to visualize and really get a spatial view of a home, of in the home, to understand where there may be different zones, and being able to understand where there may be spots that just aren't getting connectivity or have different structural pieces. In my own home, my water heater and all of my mechanicals live in a space that is basically cinder block. So all of the great things that I need for smart water, water mitigation to make sure there's no flooding in my home, are amazing, but they also have to have connectivity so that they work properly to do the alerting. And that creates a different kind of dynamic in my own home that I need to add more space into. So Jess, just to put into the chat a second part, and maybe this, I'd love to get, Domenico, your perspective. What's the typical first time whole home broadband install rate? Are there industry benchmarks? And then I'll ask for that first, and then we can take the second part.
Yeah. So there is, probably not a super surprise. That's a great question, by the way, that came through. Just a few years ago, being in the high 80s was acceptable, which is probably surprising maybe to some listening. Well, surprising to me. But now 96% is pretty normal, and there's a target rate of 98, 99%, right? That even 1% is unacceptable, which makes sense, right? Because, well, it should make sense that when they come to your home, you should be lit up to receive broadband Wi-Fi services so you can get going, right? And connect all those devices Sergio and Lawrence talked about. So it's been an improvement in the industry. If you think about that, just a few years ago, we were talking about high 80s and now we're at the mid 90s. I think I may know where you're going with the next question, because I'm not sure that's the right question, but I would love, meaning no offense to the question that was asked, but I think there's more of a question now that's starting to brew.
Right. So my question is that measurement the right measurement? Is it, when we think about a device being lit up, which is important, when you think about this being on and being in the state we expected, is that the same as having confidence?
Yeah. I mean, I'll yield to Sergio and Lawrence too, but I think this is typical of cross industries, but I will pick on telco a little bit here. This is where we're chasing a metric as opposed to chasing an experience, quite honestly, because what does it mean to have 96% success rate that broadband is lit up at your home? Lawrence said it earlier, right? But was every device lit up? Was every corner of the home lit up, right? What does that mean? So while we're thinking as an industry, like, man, we're really improving, we actually are probably pretty behind the customer expectation, quite honestly, when you think about it, because they've moved past that. They've moved past the lighted up my home. Now they're like, make sure, like what happened to me a moment ago, that I could quickly fix what was going on while in the middle of a call, right? I mean,
Right.
actually kind of happy that happened, right? Because that's how quick things should be for us to fix, right? That's the tools and the connectivity that you need. But I'll yield to Sergio and Lawrence to see how they predict. But I do think they're thinking of the wrong metric at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I just think of an example, right? So last month, I was on a video call, and my office just on the second floor, and my son was playing. He was gaming in the basement, and guess what? One of the two didn't work. So I was fine on my video call, but because we had moved an extender, I think the week before that, to give me better signal in my office, now he wasn't getting signal for his latency was pretty bad for his gaming. So then we had a problem, and we had to go back and get another extender. So something like that could be caught, like, in a proactive fashion. That speaks exactly down to what you're talking about. I think that's a good example of that.
Yeah, you hit it, George. There are words that you keep using about being proactive. I really like that. You introduced the variability of latency also. So Megan, as you said, we at one point thought about binary. You either have broadband or you don't have broadband.
Right.
Speed is something that's an easy number. It's easy for the marketing team to go ahead and say you get the following speed at the following price. But have we talked about latency? And that's a big dynamic. So there are a lot of variables that go on beyond simply the binary, do you have it or not? And as Sergio also mentioned, it's not just one number or one for any of these things. Everywhere in the house, different parts of the house might be connected, might have certain speeds, might have different latencies. And it all comes again to, as Domenico was saying, the customer experience. At the end of the day, the customer knows whether they're happy or not. And if you can proactively see and manage it in a way, and to do that, you either need to have good technology in the home that the carrier can always see everything, or you're enabling the individual to go ahead and seamlessly and easily map it and see it on their own. And if you want an individual to map it and see it easily on their own, I think we've all done speed testers on our devices or on our phone. But that's one device where your computer happens to sit. To go ahead and use a Texi solution that gives you a full experience and leveraging the many years of experience with consumer electronics, it's a unique kind of solution off of a device. It's sometimes those truck rolls, those system installers, they're coming in with a specialized device. Okay, that's great for the first time install, but that's not going to help somebody manage and figure things out on an ongoing basis. Being able to have a solution embedded in a handset, in a phone, is particularly powerful.
I agree. Lawrence, I always think about, could my mom use this? Can I use it? Can any regular non-technical person? So many times and I am certainly as a member of a technology team, over rotated to the bits and bytes, but it's really, how is this going to change the experience? And when we think about this ultimate goal of ensuring that when something new is installed, ensuring on the ongoing basis from a troubleshooting, a proactive resolution, it really is this dynamic that we're working together in this industry, which is many times people believe that and many of the telcos and manufacturers believe that the telemetry that is existing that tells me about a specific device gives me everything I need. Tools like Texi that are overlay that allow you to see and really see what a space looks like and understand the dynamics of connectivity, which is not visible for many, it makes that visible immediately, is a differentiation for that experience piece. And, Domenico, I'd love to understand from your perspective, how do you think that is going to change the dynamic for growing customers and really attacking churn?
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's two parts to this. One, I'll share a little bit of a conversation I was having with a carrier recently, and they really boasted about their telemetry capabilities and being able to see what they can able to see. And quite honestly, it was very impressive. It was very impressive what they were able to do and their commitment to putting the technology in their routers. It's phenomenal. As a, again, former embedded telco executive, and now someone who's equally embedded in the industry and the trends, it is impressive in the commitment to doing that. But the reality is the telemetry does not tell you the whole story. It doesn't tell you to the corners of the home of where people are using devices or need devices. And more so, there isn't anything to show a customer so they understand what kind of service they're getting. You can't tell them. I mean, I'm still cracking up about the electricity and the water thing Lawrence talked about earlier. I can only imagine somebody walking up to my house and say, I've delivered water to your home. Here's where it goes. It only goes to these 2 rooms. But I've delivered what I said I was going to do. I mean, oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine that conversation, right? But today there's not a process. Think about it. There's not a process to turn around and show somebody like, here's how your Wi-Fi set. The question you get is, where would you like it? And if you ask the wrong person in my home, it's going to be hidden and it's going to be somewhere where nobody can see a wire, right? And look, the technician who's doing it is absolutely doing the right job. They're doing what the customer said, right? But they're not setting up the customer for success because they do not have the tools to set up the customer for success at the end of the day. But if they turned around and showed me a visual and said, so here's where it's green and you could go as fast as you want to based on the speed you're getting, but here's some red spots. Does that matter to you? Mm-hmm. In some cases, the answer is going to be, it doesn't. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted. And others like, you cannot leave until it's all green here. And here's why. To put somebody in that position is going to be huge. So I think the first carrier that comes out and is able to really put out there end-to-end home services that it's like, we can help you have end-to-end. Of course, is it going to be a bigger cost for a customer? Sure. They might have to buy, a puck or, some type of mesh network to help them out. But again, that's what they should do, right? That I would rely on that expert, especially if they're showing me a tool that proves what they're saying and there's credibility built in there, right? Seeing is believing. And if I see it, I understand it. And again, it just gives me the opportunity to be more intelligent about my services, to go like, I do not get service there, so I'm not going to work there. So I think the first that does that, it'll be a win. I'm really excited for what it's going to do to the market, because I think then everybody starts to win, and most importantly, the customer starts to win. So that's how I interpret your question, and that's how I think the industry should move forward, to invest in those kind of tools to do that. I mean, we need to get past just delivering it to the home, which I've already said. It's more about how we deliver to where the customer wants to work, right? And some days, especially working at home, some days I want to work in here, some days I don't, right? To make myself more productive. And I should have the freedom to make that decision, right? Not just tell me where I want to put it in my home and then go, oh shoot, I forgot it's downstairs inside a cabinet, right? That doesn't make sense.
Right. So not to put words in your mouth, Domenico, but it sounds like, and this was the second part of the chat, when you think about verifying an installation or, putting in a new service, that adding this extra layer is the kind of recommendation that gives a commitment, a guarantee, a comfort for the customer to really understand what they can expect from their connectivity. So
I think it's, you didn't put words in my mouth. I think it's the perfect articulation, and it all ties back to experience. I mean, we can keep going and going about that, but I think everybody on this, watching this, and everybody on this call for sure understands that. But it goes back to setting the expectation. And imagine that first 90 days, right? I already know how and what you're going to deliver for me. That's already much better than I've ever had before, right? So as I'm doing that first 90-day critical evaluation, I walk in with eyes wide open. I know exactly what I'm going to get here. I know where the gear shift is, and I'm cool with it, right? As opposed to like, what do I have to get used to now, right? Why is this different? Why can't I have it? I used to have it in my bedroom. Why don't I have it now? Because to Sergio's point, even though the router may have been placed somewhere completely different by a new carrier, I don't think that way. I'm like, this carrier is not providing the service. Right? I blame them, right, Sergio?
Yeah, and I think, Dom, maybe you had mentioned this concept when we were talking, but this concept of the connectivity birth certificate, right? We talked about that. And it's that whole concept of we need that visual verification of being able to document the install and verify that initial setup. And that in turn helps prevent churn, helps prevent repeat visits. It's a great resource, whether it's me as a customer self-serving, or it's for the call center agent seeing what's happening in my home, or it's the tech if they ever have to come back for another visit, right? So, when I look at this from a customer CX lens, right, I'm looking at the strategic advantage of having that one visibility. It's not just for CX, but for what I call EX, the employee experience, the technician confidence, and really also cross-functional accountability in terms of being able to, and if you're able to integrate that into your CRM on the CX side, and now you're sharing that visibility across all the stakeholders. So there's no more blame game between agent versus field tech versus customer versus chatbot, right? Everyone sees the same picture. So I think that's a really cool path forward for us.
And Sorja, the birth certificate is perfect because it is for everyone, including the customer.
Yeah,
Lawrence,
it was a different direction than I was thinking beforehand. Just talking about that first time installer. I used to be on the board of a company that was a system installer. So it was a third-party installer for many carriers, essentially controlled much of the market west of the Mississippi. And the idea of having this visual verification and certification and documentation for future users, if there ever is a problem, is another great way. I was thinking of originally when I was talking about things about from the end customer perspective, but yeah, using the exact same tools from the installer perspective and having that kind of information is extremely valuable. It certifies it for the carrier that it was done correctly and that people should have an install. And then for documentation and just for checking things into the future is very valuable. Not all carriers rely on third-party installers. Sometimes they do it on their own. Even if you use your own tech people, it's the same valuable information that you're going ahead and documenting and keeping.
Well, it sounds like we're all in agreement that providing a new level of visibility that lets me see the space in a way that's easily digestible, isn't just a bunch of numbers as the end customer, sets my expectations, sets us up for success together, and can transform how we attack this first 90 days or churn all the way through, but really the first 90 days. I shared with the team internally, Lawrence, your comment about we're 100% accountable for the experience in that first 90 days. And I think we're aligned to how we can help to do that. We've had a couple of questions in the chat. First, I want to just say thank you to our board advisors for just another incredible conversation. It's clear that the connectivity experience is really at the heart and the battleground of what we will see next in the telecommunications environment. And at Texi, we're positioned to help any of the telecommunications teams have better success to win in the long term and to create a different kind of customer experience. For those of you on the webinar who have additional questions, we'll make sure that we follow up on any questions. And I encourage everyone to feel free to schedule more time for us to deep dive into how the solutions work. And thank you for joining. Lawrence, Sorja, Domenico, thank you very much for your time. And thanks for everyone to join us today.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, folks.
Enjoyed it.